bookish friends, my name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be taking on the mid-year book freakout tag. Okay, so the first prompt is, what is the best book you've read so far this year? So I couldn't narrow it down to only one book, so I'll give you my top three. The first one is Recitatif by Toni Morrison. This is a short story that follows the friendship of Roberta and Twyla. They are two friends that grew up in an orphanage, and they're there for very different reasons. One of them is white and one of them is black. We get a lot of descriptions of their speech, of their clothing, and of their families as well. And the point of it is to try to figure out who is white and who is black, but it's never explicitly stated. And all of the different hints about their races can be a little bit conflicting. So it is an experiment that Toni Morrison has done on her readers, kind of get them to question their biases about race. And it also explores the themes of friendship and how the past can be remembered very differently. So we do have a little bit of unreliable narration going on in this story as well. Okay, so the next top read that I want to mention for 2025 so far is On My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. And this is a young adult novel, so it follows Sal and Noor, who are two Pakistani American friends, and they are growing up in California. So the story follows their individual struggles with their family, with grief, and with trying to escape their small town. They're dealing with a lot of complexities in their relationship together, but also they have a lot of intergenerational trauma to try to overcome in this story. And the novel is told from three different perspectives. So it's told from Sal's, Noor's, and Sal's mother's, as they're all grappling with their past and the present situations. Sal is dealing with a lot of things with his mother. The story has a lot of very intense topics. It explores themes like alcoholism and grief and forgiveness, as well as trying to find your own individual identity within your cultural heritage. And it highlights some of the immigrant experiences that a lot of Americans will face. This is a story that I felt personally connected to, as I am the child of immigrants, so it was a very deeply moving and impactful read. Alright, and then the last top read that I have to mention is The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This is a World War II historical fiction that takes place in Nazi-occupied France, and it involves the story of two sisters, Vian, who is a wife and mother, and Isabel, who is a younger sister. She's very feisty and independent, and she wants to do everything she can to resist the Nazis. So Vian is trying to lead as normal a life as is possible, and Isabel joins the French resistance. And the novel explores a lot of different themes of courage, of sacrifice, of inner strength and love, and the impact that war can have on everyday people. It really does this by highlighting the lens of women in the war, which is not a perspective that is often represented, but it is a very impactful and poignant read. And the narrative really shows the harsh realities of war and the difficult choices that people have to make to survive. It was a very deeply moving read. It was very impactful and powerful. I cried several times while reading it, but it's one that I definitely highly recommend. Alright, so the next prompt is, what is the best sequel that you've read so far this year? Alright, so the first sequel that I have to mention is Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This was a reread for me, so I've read this 4 or 5 times before, and I absolutely love the story. It's set in a near future America, that in this dystopian world, it is no longer the United States, it is now called Panem, and there is a rebellion kind of going on within this system because there is a lot of oppression happening in this world. I love seeing Katniss's character growth in this one and just all the developments in the plot. It was super action-packed, and the Hunger Games in this one were even more brutal than the last ones, but very exciting to read about. I just absolutely adore this book. This is one of my all-time favorites that I've ever read, and if you haven't read this trilogy yet, I highly recommend it. And then the other sequel that I have to talk about is Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone by Diana Gabaldon. This is the 9th book in the Outlander series, and it is the last one that is currently published. It follows World War II time-traveling nurse Claire, who travels back to the 18th century, and she meets a Highlander there named Jamie, and they fall in love. And that's kind of the premise of the first book, but this is kind of spreading out on their adventures. So by the 9th book, we have a lot more characters introduced. They're in the Americas at this point, and there is a lot of intrigue going on with the Revolutionary War, and with all the characters being reunited again after some of the events of the previous book. I don't want to go into too many more details, but I highly recommend this series. I just love all the character bonds and the plot development that happens in this story. It is one of my all-time favorite historical fiction series. Okay, the next prompt is, what is a new release you haven't read yet but want to? So I really want to dive into Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This takes place in the same near future dystopian world of Panem as the Hunger Games trilogy, but it takes place around 25 years before the main trilogy happens at the 50th annual Hunger Games. We're following Haymitch's games in this book. So Haymitch is Katniss's mentor in the original series, so we get to see his experience through the games and how they've kind of evolved over time. I really want to know more about Haymitch's Finch's backstory and how he becomes who he is in the main trilogy. I just love this world so much, and I can't wait to dive into this one. So it's definitely one that I need to pick up before the end of the year. Okay, and then the other new release that I really want to read that I haven't gotten around to yet is My Friends by Fredrik Backman. This tells the story of 4 teenagers who connect over the summer and how this bond will later impact a young woman named Louisa 25 years later. It alternates between the past and the present timeline, and it focuses on the teenagers' friendship and the creation of a very significant painting. And then in the present, Louisa is trying to deal with a lot of loss in her life, and she discovers this painting and she wants to understand its origins. So it sounds like a very interesting book that will explore themes of friendship, of human connection, and of art and the impacts that that has on us. I absolutely love Fredrik Backman's writing. I've connected with each and every one of the stories that I've read by him so far, and so I think this will be a really good read for me. Definitely one that I am really looking forward to. The next prompt is, what are your most anticipated releases for the second half of the year? So I have 2 for this. First, I have The Princess Knight by Kate Jacobs. This is a debut fantasy novel from this author. I've been following Kate on TikTok for a very long time, so I'm excited to see that they're getting a book published. And in this one, it's about a princess who is desperate to win back the prince that broke her heart. And so she follows him to his kingdom's very prestigious military academy, and they end up falling in love, saving their realm, that sort of thing. It sounds like a big epic fantasy quest journey story, and it sounds super exciting. I can't wait to dive into this one and explore their writing style. I think it'll be a really nice romantic read to dive into in the second half of the year, and I'm hoping to read it before 2026. Okay, and then the other anticipated release is Catabasis by R.F. Wong. This is a dark academia fantasy novel that follows 2 rival Cambridge University graduate level students, and they have to kind of travel into the underworld to save their professor, and they go on a big epic journey in this. Alice is driven by a desire for recognition, and she's trying to get a last-minute letter of recommendation from her professor, but they find that the journey to hell is filled with peril and that the rules of the underworld are a lot more complicated than it seems. They have to navigate a lot of complicated emotions here and deal with their past rivalry and relationship. It explores a lot of themes of ambition, rivalry, redemption, sacrifice, all of that, and it's set in this hellish backdrop. So Alice is the main primary perspective of the story, and so she's kind of exploring her relentless pursuit of academic success as well as her relationship with Peter. This story dives into the characters' motivations, their past interactions, and the emotional toll that the journey takes on them, and it sounds super interesting. I've been wanting to try out some of R.F. Kuang's writing, and I can't wait to dive into this one. It sounds like something that would be completely up my alley. The next prompt is, what is your biggest disappointment of the year? And I do have to say, unfortunately, that Deep End by Ali Hazelwood just didn't work for me. It follows Scarlett, or Vandy, and Lucas as they start a relationship after they begin hooking up. They have a lot of similar sexual preferences, they're very into kink, and Lucas had previously been dating Scarlett's best friend named Penelope in this one, so it explores their relationship against the backdrop of their swimming and diving competitions. It is a sports romance novel, and I really like the sport aspects of the diving and swimming stuff, but I just couldn't get behind the relationship. It really felt like they were not super connected, like their connection was just based on their sexual preferences and not emotionally, and so I just had a really hard time connecting to the characters or their relationship. I really didn't like the best friend in this story, and it left a lot to be desired for me. Unfortunately, it just didn't work for me, but I'm hoping that some of Ali Hazelwood's other books might work better in the future. Okay, so the next prompt is, what is the biggest surprise of the year? So I'd say that the biggest surprise for me is Unloved by Peyton Corinne. I'd heard really good things about this story, but I didn't know just how much I would love this myself. It is one of my absolute favorites of the year, and I highly recommend it. It follows Freddie, who has dyscalculia, ADHD, and dyslexia, so it makes it very hard for him to pass his college classes. He's really struggling, but he's trying to just finish and graduate so then he can start his contract with the NHL, since he is a very accomplished hockey player. And it also follows Ro, who is a hopeless romantic. She's had a lot of poor luck with love, and she is Freddie's new tutor. So she's telling herself that she's happy with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, but you can clearly see that the relationship is very toxic and there is a lot of struggle there. Both of these main characters have to go on big journeys of self-discovery and deal with a lot of emotional fallout from that. And they both feel unloved and unappreciated, and they have feelings of inadequacy that they have to try to deal with. So all of that is explored in the story. There are a lot of very deep topics discussed in this, and it was a romance that I felt really connected to, and I really just loved the story and the development that happens throughout. They both figure out that they deserve better in their lives, and they end up together in the cutest way. I highly recommend this book, and this is one of my all-time favorite sports romances that I've ever read. I really need to go back and read Unsteady, the first book in the series. Okay, so the next prompt is, what is your favorite new author of the year? So they could be a debut author or one that's new to you. So I have 2 of them, and the first one is Sabaa Tahir. She is the author of All My Rage and also the An Ember in the Ashes series, and I really thought that All My Rage was a very profound and impactful read. I really enjoyed that book. I thought that it resonates a lot with the children of immigrants and immigrants to the United States, and it reminds me that I need to go back and read the A Number in the Ashes series and dive into those books because they're very highly beloved. And then the other new author that I really fell in love with was Thea Hawthorne. She is the author of A Reverie of Roses and some other sapphic fantasy novellas and stories. I just really liked the romance aspects of the story. The romantasy was so easy to follow, and the relationship was such a cute build-up. It was a very short story that I read from her, as it was less than 100 pages, but I really enjoyed her writing. I love the floweriness and just the descriptiveness of it, and so I really need to read more works by her. Okay, the next prompt is, who is your newest fictional crush? So I'd say it was Freddie from Unloved by Peyton Corinne. He's just so sweet, and he deserves so much better than he's getting. He has ADHD, dyscalculia, and dyslexia, but that does not mean that he's not worthy of love. Even if he has a harder time passing his classes, he is still a whole person, and he treats the main female protagonist so well in the story. He's super sweet. He always is telling her that she deserves better than her crappy ex-boyfriend, and he is just someone that I swoon over. Such a sweet protagonist, a little bit of a cinnamon roll, but comes across as a bad boy character, and I just love him to pieces. Okay, the next prompt is, who is your newest favorite character? So I would say Eve Brown from Act Your Age Eve Brown and Ro from Unloved by Peyton Corinne. These characters are some of my favorites. I love that Eve in her story is very clumsy. She doesn't really have her life figured out, and I think that's a very relatable situation, especially to a lot of people in their 20s. I just thought that she was a very humorous character. She really gets the male main character out of his grumpiness a little bit and pushes him out of his comfort zone in the best possible ways. And then I'd say that Ro from Unloved is such a passionate character. She really deserves so much better than she gets at the beginning of that story, and she fights for Freddie and his academic needs in the story. I really love that about her, and she really doesn't take no for an answer. She's very ambitious and dedicated, and I admire all those qualities. Okay, so the next prompt is, what is a book that made you cry? So I have a few answers for this. First, I would say Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah. This story follows two friends who have a decades-long relationship from the 70s all the way to the 2000s in the modern day, and so it follows their relationship over time as they navigate school, work, romances, and all the changes that life brings. It is a really beautiful story about friendship, and there is a major plot point that happens later on in the story that really made me sob. I can't really share what it is, but it had my heart breaking for them, and you really see a lot of the difficulties and struggles that they face in their relationship. I cried for hours on end after I finished the end of this book, and if you read it, you'll definitely know why, but it was a deeply moving read. Okay, so the other two books that made me sob were An Echo in the Bone and Written in My Own Heart's Blood by Diana Gabaldon. This is the 8th and 9th book in the Outlander series, respectively, and I just really felt that some of the plot points were super sad in these. In An Echo in the Bone, we see a very beloved character pass away in the story, and I just sobbed when that happened. Claire and Jamie get to return to Scotland for the first time in several books, and so much has just changed with the American Revolution going on as well in the backdrop. It was a deeply moving and powerful read, but I was hurt by this one a lot. And then in Written in My Own Heart's Blood, there is so much that happens in the story. We are back in the Americas after their trip to Scotland, and something happens to Claire in this story that really made me sob. I was not well when I read it, and I can't really share what happens to her because it's a major plot spoiler, but both of these books were major tearjerkers for me. Okay, so the next prompt is, what is a book that made you happy? First, I have Act Your Age Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This one follows Eve, who is a very humorous and clumsy character. Her romance is super cute in the story, and I love how she challenges the male main character to get out of his comfort zone. It was a super sweet, lighthearted read, and I just really enjoyed all the hijinks that happened in this story. I thought it was really funny and a great time. And I also have Funny Story by Emily Henry. This follows Daphne, who her fiance Peter recently broke off their engagement, and so she's stranded in Michigan without a place to live, without friends or family or anything like that. She only has her dream job working as a child's librarian, but she doesn't have enough money to pay her rent that way, so she ends up having to move in with her ex-fiance's best friend's ex-boyfriend, and he is her new roommate. They have very different lifestyles. He's very chaotic, and he loves listening to heartbreak ballads and all of that, and Miles is not really practical, unlike Daphne. It is a story of her refinding who she is after the end of her relationship, and also it is the romance of Daphne with her new roommate Miles. I really enjoyed this story. I thought it was such a sweet romance. I like that they have a slow build-up, so it is a friends to lovers story, and they don't immediately start dating or anything like that. They build this over time, so it has the fake dating and the friends to lovers trope, and I absolutely love both of them. I just really thought that this was such a sweet story, and it made me really happy. Okay, the next prompt is, what is the most beautiful book that you've acquired this year? So I would say it's this very stunning edition of Aladdin and the Arabian Nights. This I got for my birthday at the beginning of the year, and I just love this edition. It is absolutely stunning. As you can see there, it's got gold foiling, and I just love the blue backdrop as well. I am obsessed with this. I'm so glad to have this in my special edition classics section. I am slowly building up that collection, so I'm hoping to get more beautiful books like this, but it even has gold sprayed edges and this ribbon that comes in it that's purple. I just adore this edition. You can take a closer look there. And I really love the bronze elements of the covers of this. I am excited to dive into this one, and I really just love looking at it. Okay, and then the final prompt is, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? So first I have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. It's about Eva, who is a single mom. She's an erotica writer, and she meets up with Shane at a literary convention, and they end up having an attraction to each other, and I guess a relationship forms from there. But this is a second chance romance. They had previously been together about 15 years before, and I'm really excited to dive into this one. I know that it's not just romance, that there is a lot more development behind it, and I've heard nothing but good things about Tia Williams' writing, so I really need to get to this one. Been on my TBR for quite a while, and I think that I will really enjoy it. The next book that I wanted to spotlight is The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. I've had this on a number of TBRs, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. It is the sequel to The Soulmate Equation, which is the first book in this series, and it follows the best friend of the main character in that book. So we follow Fizzy in this one, and she is a romance novelist, but she's kind of run out of inspiration. She hasn't had a lot of romance in her life recently, so she's looking to get re-inspired. And then we also have a documentary filmmaker who's looking for his next big project, and he decides that he's going to start a reality dating show. So Fizzy wants to get onto this reality dating show in order to get re-inspired to write more books, and it kind of goes from there. I'm excited to dive into this romance. It seems like it's perfect for the summer, and I just really hope that I will enjoy it. Okay, the next book I have to share is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This follows the two Vignez sisters. One of them passes as white and one lives within her black community. It's about how their lives end up being so different as adults, even though they were very close as children. The one that passes as white marries a white man who doesn't know about her racial identity, and it's the story of how their children's lives end up being very different because of the choice that this one sister made. It sounds like a really interesting intergenerational story that I will really enjoy. I tend to like stories that follow characters across multiple decades or through a long period of time, so I'm hoping that I will really enjoy this literary fiction. I've had this on my TBR for 3 or 4 years now, and it's one that I really need to get to before the end of the year. And then the last book I wanted to highlight is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I've had this book on my TBR again for like 3 or 4 years, so I really want to get to it. It is a Romeo and Juliet fantasy retelling. So it follows two members of rival gangs that run the city, and they have this ongoing feud, and Roma had previously betrayed Juliet, a member of the other gang. So they have a lot of tensions between them, but now there is a new disease that is beginning to spread. So they're gonna have to work together to figure out what is going on in this world and find a way to stop this illness from spreading. I think it sounds like a really fun fantasy read. I know that it takes place in Shanghai, which is a location that I don't read a lot of books from. So I'm excited to dive into this one, and hopefully it will be one that I finish before the end of the year because I've been meaning to read this for so long. Alright, so that's gonna be it for me. If you decide to take this tag on and want to mention me in the description of your video, I'd absolutely love to see your videos. I appreciate each and every one of you, and wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you for another one soon. Bye!